Hello, hello. This is Sandy Fritz, and we are going to discuss Chapter 2 in Mosby's Fundamentals of Therapeutic Massage. This video is primarily made for Health Enrichment Center students, but other instructors and students can use the content as well. So let's do our screen share. And so then let's not do our screen share and get our one up here. So I think now we have the right book and the right screen. So I'm going to stop screen share just to make sure. Hi, there I am. And here we go. Yes. And share. Okay, so this is the electronic version of Fundamentals of Therapeutic Massage. You, as HEC students, you have both the paper and the electronic version, along with all of the Evolve resources, chapter tests, et cetera, on your Canvas interface. So that's a learning management system. So this series of videos is a companion to your self-study. It's kind of helping you navigate through each chapter in Fundamentals of Therapeutic Massage. We're also going to do the same thing for Essential Sciences. And it's just kind of another study help based on the expectation that you're an adult learner and you are responsible for your own reading, and I fully expect that you read the textbook. But it's helpful to have some narrative and some comment that helps you target what to take a look at. So let's click on the book and open it. And here we go. Here's our chapter 2 that we are going to work with. So let's first look at the table of contents here. I am going to make this full screen. There we go. And I'm going to increase the font. And remember, you can also have this book read to you down here at the microphone. So one more maybe. Here we go. So here's our table of contents, and this is a large chapter, but it covers that whole content area, and it is divided into segments, sections which are like mini chapters, and each mini chapter has a focus on one of the main chapter objectives with its own subsection. So in this chapter as a whole, we are going to try to take a look at ethics, how that expands on what we learned about professionalism from chapter 1, and then move into what does this impact on legal issues, like licensing. Here's our table of contents. The first thing we do is to try to define what ethics are and how that relates to standards of practice and scope of practice. So again, each of these areas are about a 15-minute learning segment. There are various activities, boxes, mentoring tips, focus on professionalism, all of these features. Pay attention, do those, read through them. You don't have to spell anything right. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it does support learning comprehension. Under scope of practice, and this might be a little bit longer discussion here, I expect we're going to have for chapter 2, a part 1, a part 2, a part 3, possibly a part 4. We'll see how this goes. So scope of practice is what we can do, and as well how we respectfully interface with other professionals. And then what does evidence-based, evidence-informed practice have to do with ethics, professionalism, and legal issues? That's an interesting concept right there. How do we move into action on these things, like informed consent in our intake procedures, confidentiality? What does this have to do with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA? How do the things like chain of trust and data storage, et cetera, if we're working in a medical setting, as opposed to a health and wellness setting, how do we adapt to the ethics and the professionalism and the legal issues around that? Our therapeutic relationship, our therapeutic alliance with the client and a client-centered focus like we looked at in the practice framework. How do we establish that respectful relationship where you are the massage therapist with the client? And how does a person's culture and religion and gender identity and sexual orientation, and how does all of that work together within professional boundaries? Expands on the therapeutic relationship with concepts like transference, dual roles, etc. And then how to make ethical decisions. This is where we will specifically introduce a critical thinking model, a problem-solving approach to decision-making. It's ethical decision-making in this chapter, but it would be a critical thinking process that you can use for treatment planning as well. Important in our ethics and relationships is the ability to communicate and also to manage conflict, because conflict is going to happen, and so you have to know some strategies on how to deal with that. The legal issues have to do with licensure primarily and being in violation of that, but there are other credentials such as board certification. And then this real dicey topic, what do we do if we are aware of unethical or illegal behavior in with our peers? And then we have our summary. So as we move through this, again, here are our chapter objectives. We've got a lot to cover in this particular chapter. I would suggest you read through this chapter more than once. Use the read to you feature and follow along. On the read to feature, you can actually speed up how fast it's being read. And sometimes listening to it faster is helpful. And follow along with your 15-minute study segment so that your brain doesn't get overwhelmed. Here are all our key terms. These are terms that you should be able to use intelligently. And then our overview. So we're in our second chapter of Unit 1. These topics here are really important. Many people struggle, not with the massage, but with these issues that show up that are covered under ethics, professionalism, and legal issues. There's a special language that goes with ethics. And so I've actually pulled that language out and have it defined here. And you're going to want to read through these definitions and be able, again, just like with the key terms, use these intelligently as you speak of these issues. So the first study segment here then is ethics and standards of practice. And you're going to learn that ethics is more vague, and standards of practice is more concrete. So we'll delve through this in this segment. Hit this button down here to get to the next section. So we go through and we define ethics. And a lot of people think they know what the definition of ethics is, but they really sort of don't, especially when it comes to professional ethics. So read through this and stop and think about it. When you see a blue link like this, if you click on it, that particular box or feature will pop up. It's going to ask you some questions about that. So here are the 8 ethical principles, not just for massage therapy, but in general, that guide the decisions that we make. Respect, autonomy, veracity, proportionality, non-malfeasance, beneficence, confidentiality, and justice. A language, again, that we have to learn so that we can speak at this level. Standards of practice is the list of things that we can do. So we drape, we do an intake, we document what's going on, we keep records. You can have a checklist for standards of practice. Not so with ethics. Ethics is much more gray. There are no real answers within an ethics. It's where the decision making comes in and making a determination about doing the right thing at the right time. So, and trying to figure out what that right thing is. Now, I want to stop and spend a minute on this focus on professionalism is actually from the entry-level analysis project, and it is talking about the professional responsibilities you have as a student. And you've heard me say before that you are an adult student and you have to learn how to be your own teacher. And the textbook is also your teacher, as well as Luke and I. So you have to have basic academic skills. And if you're going to struggle being able to read the textbook, that's going to be hard. Now, I have dyslexia, and I know that some of this can be difficult. This textbook is written at a basic 10th grade reading level. And some of it is a little less complex, more like freshman year, high school. And some of it, just by nature of the content, is going to be maybe closer to 12th grade reading level. Here's where the Read to You feature will help. And you can go back and listen to things over and over and over. And any words you don't understand, you need to look up. And that's kind of easy with Google these days. So you want to expand your vocabulary as well. So, for example, if you don't know what the word technology means, then you need to use a dictionary or some other feature. I think there's a way where you can highlight the word and click on it, and it'll take you to Google. But it's your responsibility to build that vocabulary. It's going to take study. You've got to be able to set goals. And along with that will become time management skills. So there's something called a SMART goal. And with a SMART goal, it has some guidelines around how you're going to develop that goal and measure what you're doing. And that's talked about in the textbook. Time management. How are you going to get through this course? So for Health Enrichment Center students, you've got a year. And we will have the syllabus is set up so that you have about a chapter every 2 weeks to complete all of the requirements in Fundamentals of Therapeutic Massage. And you have your essential science studies, and it's about a chapter a month. This is not excessive. Our program is set up so that you can have work/personal life time commitments, work, and go to school. But you really have to be disciplined on how you do that. So you don't want to get behind, and there's going to be stuff you don't like doing, and that's the way it is. It might feel redundant to you. It might feel like time wasted, but it's kind of not. And everything that is set up for you is working towards achieving the two main goals we have at Health Enrichment Center. Most important, teaching you to be to have the skills to become an excellent massage therapist. Secondly, to challenge the MBLEX exam. And much of the homework, the textbook content, the chapter tests at the end of each chapter, the various other study helps. That is about you passing the MBLEX exam. I will try to teach more and more study skills, but there are many websites that you can look at that talk about how do you study and how do you use a textbook. So this is something, if you don't understand it, we'll help you with that, but you also have to research and learn some of this on your own. The same with critical and creative thinking skills. The textbooks are written with this in mind. It's embedded. The questions that you'll be asked in the classroom. Seldom will you get a specific answer. We'll try to get you to come to that answer on your own. And in many things with massage therapy, there is no black and white answer. Well, it depends. It depends on what's going on here and going on here and going on here. There are very few recipes. A person has a sore shoulder, do this. Or a person wants to relax, do that. You've got to figure out how you're going to put together all your skills and your interview with your client, and understanding what their limitations are and how they're going to adapt, and your limitations. You know, when you first graduate, you're not going to have as much confidence in your skill set or as much accumulated knowledge as you will a year from there. So, and this is a people profession. You have to establish healthy relationships with others. And each of us has our kind of little thing that we have to maybe modulate some so that people are comfortable with us. Kind of a funny little example of that is with my eye condition. I also had cataracts removed. And if the light hits my eyes just right, the implant, the lens implant will refract the light and it'll twinkle. And I love having my twinkle in my eye, but it also is distracting and people don't know quite what to think about that. So sometimes I have to explain that to people if I think that's going to occur and distract them. Maybe you have an attentional issue, or you have a hearing issue where you have to be a little closer. You might have to ask people to speak a little louder. Maybe the way your neural function operates is that eye contact is more difficult. There's a body language dance that goes on in communication. If people understand that's part of how you function, and you have made efforts to modulate the behavior as much as you can and explain the rest, most people are very kind and they will understand. But if they don't understand, then they'll avoid, because that's what people do. And you don't want that. You want your people to feel confident and safe with you as you develop your client base. And you can't avoid conflict either. It's going to show up. Well, hopefully we're going to teach you how to focus on process as opposed to people, and how to use critical thinking to manage conflict. But it's going to happen. So just kind of reflect on that a little bit and see where you are going to have to add in some additional study in order to make this learning experience what's going to work best for you. Now, here's a basic code of ethics and standards of practice for massage. There's multiple organizations in the massage community, and they all have their own, but they're all pretty close. So as you look at that, this idea of respect, responsible caring, integrity, and responsibility, these things are more vague, they're intrinsic, whereas standards of practice should reflect that. So an example here would be referral of a client. If you are unsure of what's going on and you would like them to see another professional, or confidentiality and how you maintain client files and how you don't talk about clients with other people. So this is pretty concrete. And they all reflect this more abstract idea of ethics. Now, your ethics are not your morals, and professional ethics are not your personal ethics. If we're going to be a professional, and even though, as we described in chapter 1, there's confusion around that in terms of meeting all of the criteria, we still act professionally. And if I am in my professional role, then I have to abide by the profession's interpretation of ethics and standards of practice, whether I personally would agree with that or not. And because we're in a service profession, we have to understand that it's harder for people to differentiate what we do in our personal world with what we do in our professional world. So we have to always behave professionally as we're representing massage therapy. And what I do as a massage therapist reflects on every massage therapist, just like what you do, what you say, how you look, how you follow through with these various standards of practice, your commitment to lifelong learning. So, scope of practice is another issue. What can we do and what is out of our realm? So this is a gray area in the massage world. Primarily, massage therapy is a health and wellness occupation. We work mostly with people who are not critically ill or acutely ill. And if we do, in a medical setting, we work within a team structure and with supervision by nurses, doctors, chiropractors, etc. So we don't diagnose and we don't prescribe and that sort of thing in general. And each of your state licenses will define what your scope of practice is. And we also have to be very aware of other scopes of practice. And this box 2.2, I pulled from the Occupational Regulation Department in Michigan, but they're pretty much standardized. So I have to be careful that I don't function and act like or put myself forward as an athletic trainer, for example, or a chiropractor, cosmetologist, esthetician. I have to respect their scope of practice. If they have a defined scope of practice, we might share some methods. An esthetician may do some massage on the face and the neck and maybe on the hands, but it's primarily focused on the skin, whereas massage therapists cannot avoid touching the skin. But our outcomes are not specifically related to the skin. So we have to work through this. This is going to be kind of an ongoing discussion point. And Luke is fond of saying, you gotta learn to stay in your lane. Be proud that you're a massage therapist. Don't be a physical therapist wannabe. If you want to be and do rehabilitative physical therapy type work, then go to school to be a physical therapist. If you're going to be a massage therapist, then be an excellent massage therapist. You listen, but you're not a psychologist. Active listening skills and providing health messaging is part of our scope of practice, but not in the same way that a psychologist is going to work with somebody. We don't have the training for that. Now, that's happened before in my videos, and what that is my cat is sitting behind the computer and scratching. It's just like hearing the birds in the background. Now, I'm going to make this screen, I'm going to try to make this smaller here. There we are. So that you can see this figure. Right here. So one of the things that's confusing with massage therapy is that we think that all of these different forms and styles of body work and or manual therapy are different. Well, and they are. They have oftentimes a unique language, which is confusing. They might have a focused approach to a particular body area. They may have a cultural construct. They might be the legacy of a specific teacher. But when you overlap them all, then we have this core here. And that's what therapeutic massage is. That's also why Swedish massage, as a overarching theme with massage therapy, is too limiting. We can include all aspects of all of these things within massage therapy. And Swedish massage, it is a very good form and style of massage, and it overlaps in much of the area that people see as methods and approaches for massage therapy, but it's only a part. We have evolved beyond that. So here's what I focus on. Now, I've learned this stuff. I've taken a lot of continuing education, and I encourage you to do that. But I always come back to this. Where are we more alike than we are different? Then this box also explains the idea of levels of scope of practice, as opposed to even a level of training. And we move into a broader scope of practice with more experience and more education. So this whole purple box here is the scope of practice for therapeutic massage. This whole outline. Whoops. There we go. This whole outline right here. But when you graduate from your massage program, you're probably most competent working in this part of the scope of practice. You're working with people that are generally functioning good and focusing on maintaining that. And this is that vocationally based training of 500 to 750 hours in there. And I'm very supportive of this. And we know we have to learn enough to know when to refer and when not to. When we're thinking about what we do with massage therapy, we hurt people when we know when not to work, if we don't know when not to work. So we don't want to do that. This is most of the population. And we can be part of a support team with all these other professionals. When the client becomes more complex, then we may need more training. This is where continuing education and specialization comes in. So if you wanted to focus on working in an environment like in sport and fitness, specifically, there are things that you need to know related to that population specifically that would require some additional training. Not so much in the massage, but to understand things like performance demand and so forth. If you want to work in a medical environment, an acute care environment, most of your massage is going to be palliative, comfort care, very important. And people don't have good adaptive capacity. You can't demand a lot of their body when they're in that type of a situation. And so learning more about adaptive responses and maybe medication that people might be taking and how you would alter your application based on that. That's where you fill up the scope of practice even more. And then at the highest level, you're dealing with fragile people. And obviously you still do your normal adaptation and your strained adaptation. You still do all that, but now with experience, most often working as part of an interdisciplinary team with other professionals, you learn more about rehabilitation, treatment, the ability to adapt and modulate the massage even more. An athlete at peak performance would actually fall into this category, as well as somebody that's right in the middle of treatment with chemotherapy, somebody who is being treated for burns, somebody who has depression. This is where it gets complex, and you sort of kind of don't want to be all by yourself in that environment. And that's going to take more training. And there are career pathways to this. So we discussed that a little bit in chapter 1 on how we can become licensed at a vocational level, move forward, learn more, reflect that in board certification. And then if we wanted to pursue academic degrees, there are pathways for that to occur, either in massage therapy or in another occupation, like public health. So down here, most often we are working in conjunction with a multidisciplinary team. So we know how to need to be part of that and what our scope of practice is within it. So that pretty much explains that whole concept. And I'm going to bring the font up just a little bit again here. And so here we reflect again on our massage, which is manual therapy that many professionals can use, but it is unique to massage therapy and massage therapy practice for us. It is our primary method. That's what makes us a unique occupation. And we practice uniquely. We can practice in this wellness and health promotion arena, which I strongly, strongly, strongly support, as well as within a multidisciplinary team in medical care with people that are more complex. And there's a continuum here, certainly. So let's just kind of keep that in mind. Now, salutogenesis and the wellness continuum, this has been around a long time, and it's coming forward again through public health and quality of life. And it's about moving towards health and supporting health and well-being, not to replace specific pathological treatment. But as massage therapists, the salutogenesis is the idea of helping somebody do the very best they can in the circumstances. And so pay attention to that and look it up even more and learn more about that. So we go on and talk about scopes of practice here. We can even move into a specialization if you want. You can move into dealing with oncology care or athletes or supporting mental health or VA, post-traumatic stress. These are all areas of specialization where you don't learn new massage, you learn more about the periphery of that specialization. You can also specialize in a method. Some people like specialize in reflexology, which historically is about reflexive responses by massaging the foot and the hand and reflexes on the ear, that sort of thing. But mostly it's about learning how to adapt to people that have specialized circumstances. So we have to divide the scope of practice then between a wellness-based scope of practice and a medical care-based scope of practice. So make sure that you've got a good working understanding of that. And then our scope of practices are also limited by ourselves. So if we're real skittish working with people that are in their active dying process, then that's going to limit our ability to practice. If we haven't got sufficient training to know how to recognize situations in a normal pregnancy that could indicate that there's some problems starting to occur. That might limit our practice. If we are not aware of how performance demand and the repetitive nature of that affects a client, then that's going to limit our scope of practice. So each of us has our own box. And the more we have experience and the more we work, the more we learn. Self-teaching, I do a lot of self-teaching. The more we learn, then our limits reduce. And we want to make sure that we appreciate the body-mind-spirit connection, as I've mentioned before, but our scope of practice is the body. And the psychosocial context around how bodily function, our autonomic nervous system, our endocrine system, how all of that interfaces with our behavior and our mental state. Now, we're going to talk more about evidence-based and evidence-informed practice. This is in our research chapter that will be coming up in the future here. But it's important to mention this related to ethical practice. There are a lot of myths out there, myths that we used to think were correct, but research hasn't held up to that. And so if we are still operating under dated information, and have not remained current, that's not an ethical way of providing massage therapy. So you'll want to investigate, in particular, the Massage Therapy Foundation. You're going to want to learn how to use search programs like PubMed and resource websites like Medline Plus, and know what the accurate information is and not get caught up in false information. And you're going to want to become research literate. The other thing we have to look at with all of this is, what is a standard of care? Under normal circumstances, what would most massage therapists do? And we don't have a very good guidelines around that. But if you're too far off on the fringes on things, then you're probably not within an acceptable standard of care. All of this comes down to a client-centered approach that involves the client being the focus, as in our practice framework. So we have to learn how to give them enough information about us, about our skill set, about how massage with our skill set could be effective or not within their goals, whether their goals are realistic in terms of what massage can or cannot do, that we may have to refer people, what behavior we expect of people. And this all comes into the informed consent. So there's quite a little bit of information here related to your initial conversation with somebody. This box gives you specific guidelines on what you would discuss with somebody in an informed consent process. And you can use this to actually develop a brochure, which is chapter 3. But these are the things that you would want, or on your webpage, you would want to describe so that it's very clear. Then the client will agree or not agree to how you are formulating their treatment process. That's where a needs assessment and the care plan comes in. And we'll be spending a lot more time in future chapters about assessment. But if you remember from the practice framework, it is the assessment is a very, very important part of being a massage therapist. Confidentiality is just what it says, and you'd be surprised how many times people breach confidentiality. So the HIPAA actually has put some pretty concrete standards of practice around confidentiality. And this box right here actually gives you some bullet points for that brochure I mentioned earlier in developing or website and developing a policy statement. I encourage you to do that. Just go through here and step by step discuss with somebody else or figure out how you would have a conversation. Role playing is excellent for this, about sexual appropriateness or recourse policy or how you set your fees and what's a refund policy, and pre-think through all of this. And let's see where we are on our next topic. And so I mentioned this. This is primarily within the health care where medical information, client information is transmitted electronically. In the wellness setting, we don't necessarily do that, but the standards are good and we should operate, I suggest we operate as if we are being HIPAA compliant. So this, again, you've got your informed consent. This is actual example here in a form. So read through this and look and see how do this information apply to me as a massage therapist in general, how it would apply in a wellness setting, and how it would work itself through if I were practicing in a medical setting. So this is a good place to stop this video, Ethics and Professionalism and Legal Issues, Chapter 2. And we'll start with professional boundaries for Part 2. And we'll chat soon. I'm going to stop the screen share right here, come back and work my way out of this, and make sure that you take on the responsibility of being a good student to yourself, being your own teacher.